When you realize that, there's only 28 teams in the National Football League and you was the 54th highest paid quarterback in the league, it told you that there was a lot of backup quarterbacks who was making more money than you, which was clearly unfair. I decided to go to the USFL.
When the USFL folded, Williams heard from only one person.
I got a call from a guy by the name of Joe Gibbs, who just happened to be in Tampa my rookie year. He was the only guy that called, the only team that called. He called me to make sure that I could come to Washington and be a backup to Jay Schrader. And I told him, I said, Coach, I said, at this stage, I don't have a job. I can be any up you want me to be.
I really had a strong feeling that we ought to try and go get Doug. Now, the behind the scenes to that, you got to go to the owner. So I go to Mr. Cook and I said, we need to get this guy. And one of the most important positions, I think, in the NFL is your backup quarterback, because you're only one play away from being with that guy. And he's going to have to take you to the playoffs. And I was convinced Doug would be great in that role. So told Mr. Cook, and he eventually said, yeah, go get him. I think there were some other teams starting to say, hey, what?
And I hyperextended my knee, and I was in tremendous pain. And I can remember the trainer, Keoki, coming out, and I was laying there with my legs stretched out, and he was about to put his hand on my knee. I said, don't touch me. I said, because if I can get up and walk, I said, I'm going to finish this game. And I got up, and I walked away.
I still remember the play. He kind of goes back to plant on the turf. His foot slips a little bit, and he gets hit at the same time, and it was almost like doing a split.
I think you're going to have to shoot Doug to keep him off that field.
We're down 10-0 in the first quarter. Nothing was going right.
Joe Gibbs walked over, and he looked at me. He said, you ready? I said, yeah, Coach. He said, okay, we're going to get this sucker to rolling. First pass, second quarter, went for 80 yards, and the rest is history.
Probably the most productive play we had with the Redskins was Charlie 10 hitch, is what we called it. I mean, he put that thing on Ricky, and it was to the end zone.
I'm in the stands, and I'm sitting with several owners, and then all of a sudden the game turned. And I had to be the craziest person in the stands. I said, who is that? Because I went stone nuts. It was just a bang, bang, score after score.
I've never experienced anything like this in football. And it was almost like I could take the play sheet and just go that play, and it was going to be 10 yards. There's nothing I can take credit for.
So when the game ended, there was a lull for a little while they collected their thoughts and their emotions. For all of us who was waiting for this, it was the most gratifying thing that could happen to us. Knowing all the dynamics that went into all of that, and to be a part of it, I don't think I'll ever forget that.
I get goosebumps when I think about that Super Bowl, because I thought about what it meant, and I was with my father. It was just an incredible moment. And I think even to people like myself, I think there was a little air of thank God. Thank God he pulled it off.
I think at that time that probably removed the word black quarterback from the front pages.
That's interesting, because to me, this is exactly the feeling I had. I didn't get any of that. I mean, I was not thinking black quarterback. To me, it was just Doug.
That's really when I gained so much respect for his focus and his ability to stay in the game, because there was so many distractions, and he had the weight of the African American community on his back. He had the weight of every black quarterback who came before and after him on his back. And he stood up and put us all on his shoulders, and he nailed it.
And it wasn't until after the game, everything started being written about it, first black quarterback, and MVP and all that. It was kind of really took me back later on, all the significance and everything about breaking a barrier.
I can remember, bless his soul, the late Ted Kennedy, when we had a little program at the Capitol, and he made a statement that Doug Williams had done more for integration in one day than all Congress has done in a lifetime.
With the Chiefs.
More than anyone, Lloyd Wells was the super scout of the AFL, who was responsible for drafting some of the top players in not only AFL history, but in pro football history. He was largely responsible for helping build the Chiefs into the Super Bowl IV champion, when Kansas City became the first team in Super Bowl history to have more black starters in their lineup than whites.
Key to the success of Wells and other scouts in both leagues was the practice of babysitting, where players were hidden from the rival league until they had signed the contract.
One of the more famous incidents of babysitting occurred when Lloyd Wells tried to sign Otis Taylor away from the Dallas Cowboys. He was snuck out of a hotel window and was taken by Lloyd Wells to the airport, where he was then signed by Kansas City. He believed at the time that the real championship game wasn't the Super Bowl, it was the NFL championship game.
I didn't know how important that game was to the league. I didn't think about it. I just knew that it was going to require my best effort.
And you were playing not just for your team, not just for your family and for your fans, but you were playing for the league.
And wherever you would run across an AFL player, they were very, very thankful and proud to be a part of the AFL because we had won.
The first World Championship game between the AFL and the NFL saw the Green Bay Packers manhandle the Kansas City Chiefs. In Super Bowl IV, the Chiefs displayed the same level of dominance on the field, handily beating the Minnesota Vikings.
We played them at the wild card game in '69. They have Buck Buchanan on your left shoulder. They have Ernie Laird on your right shoulder, and then they have Willie Lanier coming over the top. So Willie, he comes up to the line of scrimmage, first field goal attempt, right? And he bends over the line and he says, Smitty, kiss your ass goodbye.
The championship victory represented redemption for Kansas City and would be an important tipping point on several fronts. It would eliminate misperceptions about the quality of AFL teams, as well as the prevailing notion that black players were not smart enough to handle the responsibilities of certain positions on the field of play.
Kansas City's drafting of Willie Lanier to play middle linebacker in 1967 was an interesting story because at the same time, the Chiefs drafted Jim Lynch, who was a white middle linebacker from Notre Dame, had played on Notre Dame's national championship team of 1966. So Willie Lanier and Jim Lynch competed for the same position in the Chiefs training camp in 1967. Lanier won the position and became the first black athlete to star at that position.
Jim played in the college all-star game when he arrived in Kansas City. I had been there in the full camp, so I had probably a week and a half to establish a level of play that allowed me a chance to get a little bit of a head start. My college coach told me years later, Earl Banks, that I had been invited to that college all-star game. He never told me because he felt it was important that I be there to try to establish the fact that
A defiant Muhammad Ali would inspire a multi-sport coalition of athletes to join forces in support of his refusal to serve in the Vietnam War due to his religious beliefs.
Muhammad Ali was a favorite idol of mine. I mean, this guy, I got so much respect for him, not for just his boxing, although, you got to admire that. But what he did lifted our race up more than any athlete or anybody else that I've ever known.
His ability to speak his mind and oppose the Vietnam War and do things like that were phenomenal at that point in time.
Well, Ali was like a breath of fresh air for us. We hadn't seen a brother that was, for that time, that out there. And what I mean by that is confidence. Confidence. You can't have a lot of confidence living in segregation. And it's hard to have confidence when you don't have no power.
He was being stripped of his title. And so I decided that we have to meet with him and decide, was his position honest? And was he real? I said, John, contact the champ, tell him we want to meet with him. And then if we agree with him, we will be a united group in support of him. So Wooten put it together.
9 top Negro athletes meet with Cassius Clay to discuss his anti-draft stand. They include Bill Russell, Lou Alcindor, and former pro footballer Jimmy Brown.
Muhammad Ali sacrificed. But, I believe that's what moral and ethical men do. They sacrifice. And I would suggest that Muhammad Ali paid dearly. But we all agreed with him. And we're not afraid of losing our jobs or losing the respect from people who don't respect you anyway.
The iconic photo of the Cleveland News Conference demonstrated Ali's base of support among athletes including Jim Brown and professional basketball stars Bill Russell and Lou Alcindor, who would later be known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Initially, I was very much of the sense that, well, Ali, you should go. I can tell you by the time I left that day, I was less sure.
We got to stand with him, and that's what they did. And there's no question that it saved him from going to jail.
Ali would be arrested for refusing induction into the Army. Although he would not be jailed, his boxing license was suspended and he was stripped of his heavyweight title. Ali's position as a conscientious
Bills that could be seen sooner, and that would have a greater benefit.
1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed the landmark Voting Rights Act into law, creating a legal framework to significantly expand voting rights for blacks. Despite such progress, the country remained a nation divided by the issue of race. Simmering racial tensions would come to a head at the 1965 AFL All-Star Game, originally scheduled in New Orleans.
New Orleans was very, very desirous of showing that they could host a professional football game because, of course, they were angling to have a professional football team.
I was invited to the All-Star game. Cavs wouldn't pick us up, and we stand in line for 2 hours before it hit us. Man, they're not gonna pick you guys up. And so we saw a black cab drive, and we waved him down, asked him what was the deal. He said, "Oh, they ain't gonna pick you guys up. Y'all wanna go somewhere, I'll take you." So that's how we finally got from the airport.
And they started to go into the French Quarter of New Orleans. Several people were turned away from restaurants.
When we got to the hotel, they would not let the black players up on the front elevator. You had to take the side elevator. You couldn't eat in the restaurant.
We went on and checked in the hotel, and I said, "Well, I'm going downstairs to eat." And I sat downstairs, and I couldn't eat. And this lady comes out of the kitchen and said, "Hey, Bobby," said, you can order your feet, but you can't eat here." I went upstairs. I said, "Hey, I'm not doing it."
When we got to the hotel, the woman called me a monkey. And that was about it for me. And so as I went on, checked in, went to my room, Earl Faison was coming in complaining about how he was treated. Cookie Gilchrist was coming in. It was just everybody that had an incident.
Ernie Ladd said that somebody not only turned him away from a restaurant, he did so by pointing a gun to his nose.
So we had a big meeting and we decided that's it. We would not play. The game would not be played.
And we done called our families telling them, "We're getting out of here. We're leaving on the first plane in the morning."
Supposed to go to practice the next day. We were given an itinerary. We got on the bus, and the coaches started taking roll. And one after another, nobody would answer. Buck Buchanan, no answer. Bobby Bell, no answer. Cookie Gilchrist, no answer. And finally, one of the coaches says, "Where are all these guys?" And one of the other players said, "Well, all the black guys are having a meeting right now. They're talking about boycotting the game." So I got off the bus and went to the meeting. They told me what had happened. I tried to get them to reconsider and stay there and call national attention to what was going on in this segregated city. But they said, "No, we've had enough and we're boycotting." I said, "Okay, I'll join you."
And we was in my room. And it wasn't only Ron Mix. It was Jerry Mays, Jack Kemp, and we became brothers in that hotel that night when they showed the concern. And if y'all, Jack Kemp's thing was, if y'all leaving, we leaving with you.
I had to hand it to Ron, he's down to earth guy, and he talked to us about it, he was with us 100%. The white players were behind us, because they wasn't treating us right.
We let the coaches know, and I can say the absolute truth that I didn't hear one white player complain about not wanting to join the boycott.
And true solidarity, both black and white All-Stars refused to play the game unless it was moved out of New Orleans.
And so they canceled all our flights where we couldn't get on the plane. So we went and rented cars.
We was on our way back home, and they had a news flash on radio saying that then the player can hear this message. The game had been switched to Houston, Texas.
Black players went to Al Davis. Al Davis helped them to orchestrate the move of the game to Houston.